Every estate agent in town noticed something unusual happening. A local estate agency in the UK went from having one or two sales boards in the area to having for sale and sold boards appearing absolutely across the entire neighbourhoods in less than 3 months. And interestingly, the change did not start with a new sales strategy. It actually started with a series of really simple video ads. Now, the business itself had been established for around 18 years. And like so many long-running local companies, it was already really well known in the area. But sadly, several years earlier, something had happened. The business had kind of developed kind of like a reputation that didn't necessarily reflect how that company operated anymore. Now, exactly what happened back then isn't completely clear to me, but what mattered was that the perception had stuck around in the local market. And changing that kind of perception can be surprisingly difficult. Interestingly, they'd never run any advertising campaigns before online. The business had always relied on local visibility and word of mouth to generate inquiries, which had worked. But when a new sales manager joined the company, she actually brought in a slightly different perspective. Because before joining this agency, she'd worked in some of the larger corporate estate agencies in the UK. And she knew that in those organisations, she'd seen how first-hand powerful social media could be for building familiarity with potential sellers and bringing in lots of leads as well and clients. She didn't necessarily know how the advertising system worked, but she knew something very important. She knew that consistently appearing in front of the local market changed how people perceived the business. So she wanted to introduce that same idea here. Instead of relying purely on word of mouth, the goal became simple. Start appearing regularly in front of local homeowners before they'd ever even need an estate agent. So what we did, we helped them by running a series of very straightforward video ads. Nothing overcomplicated, just really short videos answering people's questions that they naturally have when they start thinking about selling their homes. Things like, how do you know when the timing might be right to sell my home? And things like, what actually influences the price of a property in this area? What should sellers expect during this process? How does the process work? How do I prepare my home before a valuation or before a sale? Now, the purpose wasn't to generate immediate inquiries. The goal was simply to begin to show up consistently in front of the local market, build familiarity and trust. Something interesting started happening quite quickly though. The people who'd already formed an opinion about the company began seeing a very different side of the business. Instead of encountering sales messages, they were instead experiencing very helpful explanations in a business where no one really knew what actually happened when you sold a house. Instead of all that cloudiness, there was clear advice and somebody who genuinely understood the local market and understood how to communicate how it works to sell a house, which began to shift how people perceived the business and how they began to see this estate agent. Now, within a few months, the effect became so visible. More homeowners were actually walking into the business and asking for help. More homeowners were reaching out directly to them. Valuation requests increased rapidly. But one of the most interesting things about the story wasn't just about what the business itself noticed. It was what other estate agents in the area began noticing. Before the ads had started running, the agency might have had 1 or 2 boards out locally at any given month. Nothing unusual. But the crazy thing was, within less than 3 months, something massive changed. Suddenly the boards were appearing everywhere. They're for sale, they're sold, and more of them across the same neighbourhoods. And the other agents in the area began to ask what was happening, because from the outside, it looked like the business had suddenly become far more active in the market. But what had actually changed was something much simpler. More homeowners had just started recognising the company before they ever needed the estate agent, so that when the time came to sell, they already knew who they wanted to speak to, who they wanted to call. And that is something that many businesses overlook when they think about advertising. They assume the ads need to persuade someone immediately, but often the real impact actually happens a lot earlier than that. It happens when people begin recognising the business, when they start seeing them as a credible voice on a problem they care about. So if you've been wondering whether video ads could actually help shift how people see your business, it might be worth having a conversation. And you can send me a message through our contact page at tinasanford.com/contact. And then we can have a bit of a chat about what you're currently seeing inside your ad campaigns. And then from there, we can usually identify fairly quickly whether a similar approach could actually help improve your advertising and your client acquisition.